My name is Rebecca Mitchell, 34, and my daughter Emma is the light of my life. 8 years together, just the two of us against the world. This Christmas, though, my parents delivered news that shattered our holiday spirits. There was no room for us at the family gathering. The pain in Emma's eyes when I told her we weren't welcome nearly broke me. I never imagined my own family could hurt us so deeply, but what came next was even worse. Before I continue this story that still makes my heart ache, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If this resonates with you, please subscribe, because everyone deserves to know they're not alone when family lets them down. Growing up as a Mitchell meant growing up with expectations. In our affluent Boston suburb, my parents Harold and Diane were fixtures in the community. Dad ran a successful investment firm, while Mom chaired every committee imaginable at the country club. Our sprawling colonial home hosted garden parties in summer and elaborate Christmas celebrations that neighbors drove by just to admire the professional decorations. My brother Andrew followed the Mitchell family script perfectly. Harvard Business School, then straight into investment banking, where he quickly climbed the ranks. He married Heather, whose family connections rivaled our own, and they settled into a life that mirrored our parents down to the luxury vehicles and country club memberships. Then there was me. I always felt like the family puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. While I loved school, I found my passion in teaching rather than finance. After college, I pursued my education degree and landed my dream job teaching kindergarten at a public elementary school. My parents viewed my career choice as quaint at best, a waste at worst. The modest teacher's salary became another disappointment in their eyes. When I met Scott Wilson at 25, I thought I'd found someone who valued me for exactly who I was. He was charming, creative, and seemed genuinely interested in my work with children. Our relationship moved quickly, and when I discovered I was pregnant at 26, Scott initially seemed excited about becoming a father. We made plans, picked out names, and I allowed myself to imagine our future together. Then, 3 months before Emma was born, Scott disappeared. A brief text explaining he wasn't ready for this responsibility was all I received. No forwarding address, no support, nothing. Just abandonment when I needed a partner most. My parents didn't hide their disappointment. "This is what happens when you don't think things through, Rebecca," my mother said repeatedly. My father's silence spoke volumes. Only Andrew occasionally checked in, though his help came with thinly veiled judgment. Emma arrived on a snowy December morning, tiny and perfect, with a dusting of dark hair and curious eyes. The moment I held her, everything changed. I understood that whatever sacrifices lay ahead were worth it for this child. We would be each other's family no matter what. The first years were hard. Balancing teaching with single motherhood stretched me to my limits. My small apartment barely fit us, but I made it cozy with second-hand furniture and cheerful paint. Emma grew into a sweet, thoughtful child with an artistic streak that amazed everyone. By age 8, she could sketch portraits that captured not just faces but personalities. Her only struggle was occasional anxiety, especially in new social situations. Despite our strained relationship, I never cut ties with my family. I wanted Emma to know her grandparents and her uncle's family, including her cousins Lily and James. Christmas at the Mitchell house remained an annual tradition, though one filled with undercurrents of tension. Every December, we'd make the 20-minute drive to my parents' home, Emma clutching whatever handmade gifts she'd created for everyone. The house would be transformed into something from a magazine spread. Towering tree with color-coordinated ornaments, garlands winding up the staircase, and a formal dinner with the family china and crystal. My mother would inevitably make some comment about Emma's clothes or my parenting choices. My father would ask if I'd considered a more practical career path. Andrew and Heather would subtly showcase their children's latest achievements. I'd smile through it all for Emma's sake. This past year had actually seemed better. Emma's artistic talents impressed even my mother, who commissioned her to make a birthday card for a friend. My father took an interest in Emma's science fair project about bird migrations. For once, I dared to hope that bridges were being built. Then the phone calls started in early December. My mother, usually all too eager to discuss Christmas preparations, became suddenly vague about our annual visit. "We're still figuring out the details," she'd say, "or things might be a bit different this year." I should have recognized the warning signs, but I didn't want to believe my family would exclude us from the one holiday tradition that mattered so much to Emma. The call came 3 weeks before Christmas, just as Emma and I finished decorating our small artificial tree. She'd created a new ornament, a clay star, painted with delicate snowflakes, and was proudly hanging it on a front branch when my phone rang. Rebecca, my mother began her voice, carrying that formal tone she used when delivering unwelcome news about Christmas this year. Something in her inflection made me step into the kitchen away from Emma's eager ears. "We're going to have to make some changes to our usual arrangements," she continued. "Andrew's in-laws, the Prescotts, will be joining us this year. It's quite important for your father's business. Richard Prescott is considering a major investment." "Okay," I said, slowly unsure where this was heading. "That's fine. Emma and I don't mind additional company." A weighted pause followed. "The thing is, Rebecca, we simply won't have room for everyone. The Prescotts will be using the guest suite, and Andrew's family will take the blue room. There just isn't space for you and Emma." The words hit like a physical blow. "Mom, what are you talking about, Emma? And I could share my old room." "We've done it before. That won't work either. We're converting your old room for additional dining space. With 11 adults, we need the extra table room." My mind raced through alternatives. "We could stay at the Hampton Inn down the road. We'd just come for dinner and—" "That wouldn't look right," my mother interrupted. "The Prescotts are very traditional people. The whole point is to present a unified family gathering. Having people come and go from hotels would seem disjointed." The implication behind her words suddenly became clear. "Mom, are you saying the real problem is that you don't want your unwed daughter and granddaughter at Christmas dinner with the Prescotts?" "Don't be dramatic, Rebecca. This is about Andrew's networking opportunity. Sometimes sacrifices have to be made for family." "Emma and I are family too," I said, my voice cracking despite my efforts to stay calm. "Of course you are, dear," she replied, her tones softening artificially. "We'll do something with you after the holidays. Perhaps mid-January when things settle down." After ending the call, I stood motionless in the kitchen trying to process what had just happened. My own parents had uninvited us from Christmas, the same Christmas we'd attended for 8 years running, to impress business associates. Mommy Emma's voice pulled me back to the present. She stood in the doorway, concern etching her small features. "Is everything okay? Was that Grandma?" I forced a smile. "Yes, sweetie. Grandma just called about Christmas." Her face brightened. "Did she like the card I made her? I want to make ornaments for everyone too." The enthusiasm in her voice made my heart sink further. How could I tell this child who treasured family moments that we'd been deemed inconvenient, replaceable, unworthy of a seat at the table? "Emma, honey, we need to talk about Christmas this year." I led her to our well-worn couch and took her hands in mine. "There's going to be a change in plans. Grandma and Grandpa are having some business people over, and their house will be very crowded." Her brow furrowed. "But we always go there for Christmas." "I know, sweetie. But this year we're going to do something different. We'll make our own special Christmas right here." Emma's eyes welled with tears. "Did I do something wrong? Is Grandma mad at me?" "No, baby, absolutely not." I pulled her into a tight hug, fighting back my own tears. "You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes grown-ups make decisions that don't make sense, but it has nothing to do with you." "But what about my presents for everyone? I already started making Grandpa's bird picture." Her voice trembled. "We can still give them their gifts. We'll figure it out." I stroked her hair, trying to sound more confident than I felt. That night, after Emma finally fell asleep clutching her stuffed reindeer Dasher, I allowed myself to cry. The rejection stung on a personal level, but seeing Emma hurt made it unbearable. I spent hours online searching for special Christmas activities we could do instead, determined to create new memories that would overshadow this disappointment. 3 days later, while browsing Instagram before bed, I saw it. My cousin Sarah had posted photos from my parents' house with the caption, "Christmas renovation complete. Aunt Diane and Uncle Harold now have the most gorgeous expanded dining room and new guest suite. Can't wait for the big family Christmas." I stared at the images in disbelief. The additional dining space my mother mentioned wasn't a converted bedroom, it was an entirely new wing added to the house. The photos showed a massive table that could easily seat 20 people. Another image revealed a newly decorated guest suite with twin beds. There was plenty of room. They had deliberately lied to exclude us. The betrayal cut deeper than the initial rejection. One thing was being pushed aside for business connections. Painful, but at least understandable from my status-conscious parents. But fabricating space issues that revealed a deliberate choice to exclude Emma and me while pretending it couldn't be helped. I scrolled through more photos, each one twisting the knife further. Decorations were already up, including the special stocking wall where each family member's personalized stocking hung by the secondary fireplace. I zoomed in on the image. Neither Emma's nor mine was displayed. It was as if we'd been erased from the family entirely. The next morning, I woke with swollen eyes but newfound determination. If my family didn't want us at their picture-perfect Christmas, I would create something even more meaningful for Emma, something authentic built on love rather than appearances. First, I called my friend Melissa Turner, a fellow teacher whose warmth and genuineness had made her my closest friend since college. Those pretentious jerks, she fumed after I explained the situation. Rebecca, you and Emma are spending Christmas Eve with us. Non-negotiable. My kids adore Emma and Mark makes the best prime rib you've ever tasted. Her immediate support brought fresh tears to my eyes. Are you sure we wouldn't be intruding on your family time? You are family, she insisted. The kind you choose, which is often better than the kind you're born into. With Christmas Eve settled, I focused on making our Christmas morning special. I created a detailed schedule: Christmas pancakes shaped like snowmen, a hot chocolate bar with every topping imaginable, matching pajamas for our gift opening, and an afternoon movie marathon with all Emma's favorites. The financial aspect was challenging. My teacher's salary already stretched thin, covering our basic needs. The extra tutoring sessions I'd picked up earlier in the year had been earmarked for a contribution to my meager savings account, not additional Christmas expenditures. But seeing Emma's disappointment had settled the matter. Those funds would now ensure she had a Christmas worth remembering. The art supplies she'd been eyeing for months, professional colored pencils, a real sketch pad and watercolors, would stretch my budget, but her face on Christmas morning would make it worthwhile. I found sales used coupons and managed to secure everything on her wish list. Gradually, Emma's excitement about our special Christmas just for us began to grow. She helped me string popcorn garlands for our tree and created paper snowflakes for our windows. We baked cookies, lopsided but delicious, and delivered them to neighbors. Each activity built our resilience stitch by stitch, repairing the tear my family's rejection had caused. My colleagues at Oak Ridge Elementary showed extraordinary kindness when they learned of our situation. Miss Jenkins invited us to the school's holiday concert. Mr. Ramirez, the art teacher, gave Emma private lessons in watercolor painting. Principal Thomas slipped a gift card for the local grocery store into my mailbox with a simple note. For your Christmas feast. The support reminded me that family comes in many forms, often where you least expect it. A week before Christmas, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. It was my grandmother, Margaret, my father's mother, whom I saw rarely since she lived an hour away and seldom attended the formal family gatherings. Rebecca, her no-nonsense voice came through clearly. I've heard about what Harold and Diane are doing, and I want you to know I think it's absolute nonsense. Relief flooded through me at having a family member acknowledge the situation. Thank you, Grandma. It's been hard explaining to Emma why we suddenly aren't welcome. That poor child. Margaret's voice softened. I've given your father an earful about it, but Diane has him convinced this Prescott connection is worth alienating his own daughter and granddaughter. I tried offering alternatives, I explained. We could have stayed at a hotel, come just for dinner. It's not about room, dear. Sarah, let's slip that Heather specifically requested you not be included. Apparently the Prescotts are very traditional and might be uncomfortable with an unwed mother at the gathering. As if anyone cares about such things anymore. Heather convinced your parents it might jeopardize the business opportunity. The revelation struck me speechless. My exclusion wasn't just a matter of convenience. It was deliberate erasure to present a sanitized family image. I don't understand, I finally managed. Mom and Dad have never been religious. Since when do they care about appearing traditional? Since the Prescotts could potentially invest several million in your father's new development project, Margaret said dryly. Money makes hypocrites of many people, I'm afraid. Before ending the call, Grandma Margaret made a promise that rekindled a spark of hope. I'll be speaking with your father at their pre-Christmas dinner this Sunday. He may have forgotten his values, but I certainly haven't forgotten mine. This isn't over, Rebecca. For the first time since the rejection, I felt a small measure of validation. At least one family member recognized the injustice. It didn't solve our Christmas plans, but it soothed the ache of feeling completely discarded by my family. The week before Christmas arrived with a flurry of activity. Emma and I finished decorating our apartment, wrapped presents for friends, and prepared for holiday celebrations at school. Her excitement about our alternative Christmas plans had grown, especially regarding Christmas Eve at Melissa's house, where her children had promised a gingerbread house competition. One evening, while Emma worked on Christmas cards at the kitchen table, I scrolled through Instagram to see if Melissa had posted the cookie recipe she'd mentioned. Instead, my feed filled with images from cousin Sarah again, this time showing preparations for the Mitchell family Christmas. The first photo showed my parents' expansive living room decorated with even more opulence than usual. The enormous tree reached nearly to the ceiling, dripping with crystal ornaments and coordinated ribbons. The caption read, "Christmas prep at Uncle Harold and Aunt Diane's, can't wait for the whole family gathering." The words, "whole family," stung like salt in an open wound. I continued scrolling, each image revealing more details of the elaborate celebration being planned without us. One photo showed place cards being prepared for the dining table. I zoomed in, counting at least 20 names. Another showed gift bags lined up with tags. Cousin Matthew's family was attending, and they lived in Chicago. They were flying relatives in while claiming no room for us 20 minutes away. Then came the photo that stopped my breath entirely. It showed the family stockings displayed along the mantel, including one for my Uncle Robert, who lived in Florida and hadn't attended Christmas in years. Yet Emma's and my stockings were nowhere to be seen. As I stared at the screen, a message notification appeared. It was from my cousin Thomas, Sarah's brother, who had always been kind to Emma and me. "Rebecca, I don't know if you've seen Sarah's posts, but I wanted to reach out. What they're doing isn't right. I've heard the conversations about why you're not invited, and it's worse than you might think." My hands trembled as I typed back. "What do you mean?" "It's the Prescotts. Richard Prescott is considering a major investment in Uncle Harold's new development, and they're very image conscious. Heather mentioned your situation to her parents, who then specifically asked if the unwed mother would be at Christmas dinner." The blunt words made me flinch. In 2025, being judged for single motherhood seemed absurdly archaic, yet here we were. Thomas continued, "Instead of defending you, Andrew and Heather suggested simplifying the guest list. Your parents agreed it would be easier not to include you this year." "I'm sorry, Rebecca. It's completely wrong." Tears blurred my vision as I typed, "Thank you for telling me the truth. Sarah doesn't know I'm messaging you. She's too worried about staying in your parents' good graces. But several of us think this is cruel, especially to Emma." I set the phone down, overwhelmed by emotions. Hurt certainly, but now anger burned hotter. My parents hadn't just excluded us. They had allowed others to judge and dismiss us as unworthy. And for what? Business connections, social standing. The values they'd claimed to instill in us, family loyalty, integrity, compassion, apparently had price tags. "Mommy, are you okay?" I hadn't heard Emma approach and quickly wiped away tears. "I'm fine, sweetie. Just looking at some pictures." She peered at my phone screen, which still showed the Christmas decorations at my parents' house. "That's Grandma and Grandpa's tree. It's so sparkly." Her voice held no bitterness, only childlike appreciation of beauty. "Yes, it is," I managed. "I miss going there for Christmas," she said softly. "But I'm excited about our special Christmas too." She hesitated before asking, "Do you think Grandma and Grandpa miss us?" The innocent question broke something inside me. How could I explain to this child that her grandparents had chosen business connections over her, that her uncle had suggested removing us from the family, gathering like inconvenient furniture? I think I began carefully, that sometimes adults make mistakes. And sometimes they forget what's really important. Like family, Emma's perceptiveness never failed to amaze me. Exactly like family, I agreed, pulling her into a hug. "But you know what? Family isn't just about who you're related to. It's about who loves you and makes you feel special all the time, not just when it's convenient. Like Melissa and her kids, and your friends from school who brought us cookies." Yes, exactly like them. Emma considered this her expression, thoughtful beyond her years. I think I like that kind of family better anyway. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The pain remained, but alongside it grew resolve. My daughter deserved people who valued her unconditionally, and so did I. Later that night, after Emma was asleep, I took screenshots of every social media post and saved them in a folder. Not out of bitterness, but as reminders of the moment I decided our worth wasn't determined by others' acceptance. The next morning, a text arrived from my Aunt Linda, my mother's sister Rebecca. "I've declined the invitation to Christmas at Harold and Diane's. What they're doing to you and Emma is unconscionable. Would you both like to join me for brunch on Christmas Eve?" Another ally. Another reminder that not everyone in my family had lost their moral compass. "Thank you, Aunt Linda. We actually have plans with friends for Christmas Eve, but I appreciate your support more than you know." As the week progressed, I focused on creating joyful holiday memories with Emma, while processing my own complicated feelings. The truth had been painful, but it had also been clarifying. I could now see the situation for what it was, not a matter of logistics, but of values. and in that clarity, I found the strength to move forward with dignity. Christmas Eve morning dawned with a gentle snowfall that transformed our neighborhood into a winter wonderland. Emma woke early, her excitement palpable as she pressed her nose to the window. "Mommy, it's a Christmas miracle. Now our Christmas will be white and perfect." Her simple joy was infectious, washing away the heaviness I'd carried for weeks. We spent the morning baking cinnamon rolls and watching holiday movies in our matching snowflake pajamas. The apartment smelled of vanilla and spice. Christmas music played softly, and for those peaceful hours, nothing else mattered. At noon, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. I opened it to find my grandmother Margaret standing there, a large shopping bag in each hand, and snow dusting her elegant wool coat. Grandma Margaret. Emma rushed forward for a hug, nearly bowling over the 80-year-old woman. "Careful there, little artist." Margaret laughed, setting down her bags to embrace Emma. "These old bones aren't as sturdy as they once were." "What are you doing here?" I asked, helping her with her coat. "The roads must be terrible." "Nonsense. I drove through the blizzard of '78. This is just a dusting." She surveyed our small living room with approval. "What a lovely tree you have. Much more charming than that sterile monstrosity your mother puts up." Emma beamed. "I made most of the decorations myself, and it shows, dear. Handmade is always superior to store-bought." Once settled with hot chocolate, Margaret turned to me with determination in her eyes. "I've come with news, Rebecca. And presents, of course," she added with a wink to Emma, "but the news shouldn't wait." "What happened?" I asked, already guessing it involved my parents. "I attended the pre-Christmas dinner at your parents' house last night, the one where they finalized all the Christmas Day arrangements." She took a sip of cocoa. "I decided it was time to speak my mind." Emma, sensing adult conversation, asked to go work on her art project in her room. Once she left, Margaret continued. "Your father served that ridiculous expensive scotch he saves for special occasions, and just as everyone was getting comfortable, I announced I had something important to say." A mischievous gleam appeared in her eyes. "I've found that being elderly has its advantages. People assume you've lost your filter and can't stop you once you get going." I couldn't help smiling, picturing the scene. I told them exactly what I thought about excluding you and Emma. I said, "Harold, I raised you to put family first, not to discard people when they become inconvenient. You should have seen your mother's face, white as these snowflakes outside." "What did Dad say?" "He tried that business justification nonsense." "Mother, you don't understand the opportunity this represents." As if I hadn't watched his father build a company from nothing without compromising his integrity, she shook her head. I reminded him that no business deal is worth sacrificing your relationship with your child and grandchild. "And Mom," Diane kept trying to change the subject, but I wouldn't let her. Then Andrew jumped in with some weak defense about how everyone would be more comfortable this way. That's when I really let loose. Margaret described the heated exchange that followed, how she'd called out Andrew for prioritizing his in-laws' outdated judgments over his niece, how she'd reminded Diane that her own mother had been a single parent. After Diane's father died, the whole room went silent when I asked, "What exactly do you plan to tell Emma? That her existence is an inconvenience to your social climbing?" Margaret's voice softened. "That's when your father actually looked ashamed." "Did it change anything?" I asked, not daring to hope. "Your mother tried to salvage the situation by suggesting you two could come for dessert on Christmas Day. After the Prescotts leave, of course." Margaret's disgust was evident. That's when I stood up and announced I wouldn't be attending their Christmas at all. I said, "If Rebecca and Emma aren't welcome for the entire celebration, then count me out as well." Pride and gratitude swelled in my chest. "Grandma, you didn't have to do that." "I absolutely did. Standing by while family members are mistreated isn't something I can do. Your Aunt Linda left with me, and your cousin Thomas and his wife said they were reconsidering attending." She reached for my hand. "Which brings me to my invitation. I'm hosting my own Christmas dinner tomorrow. Nothing fancy, just good food and good company. Linda will be there, Thomas and his family too. We'd love for you and Emma to join us. After you open presents here." The gesture brought tears to my eyes. "We'd love that, Grandma. Thank you." As we talked, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from my mother. "Rebecca, I hope you're satisfied. Your grandmother has created quite the family drama. Now several people are declining our Christmas dinner. This was supposed to be an important networking opportunity for your father and brother. I don't understand why you couldn't just be flexible this one time." No apology, no recognition of how hurtful their actions had been. Just blame for not quietly accepting exclusion from my own family. Margaret read the message over my shoulder and scoffed. The audacity of that woman never ceases to amaze me. Before I could respond, my phone began lighting up with a series of group text notifications. My extended family members were taking sides. Some supporting my parents' right to invite whoever they wished to their home, others expressing disappointment at the treatment of Emma and me. I'm not getting involved in this, I decided, silencing my phone. Today is about making Christmas special for Emma, Margaret nodded approvingly. Exactly right. The best response to pettiness is living well. She stayed for lunch, delighting Emma with stories of Christmases from decades past when my father was a boy. As she prepared to leave, she handed me an envelope. This is for Emma's art education, she said quietly. I've set up a savings account that will cover classes, supplies, maybe even art camp in the summer. Grandma, that's too generous. It's what grandparents do, she interrupted firmly. Support their grandchildren's talents and dreams. If your parents have forgotten that, I certainly haven't. After Margaret left, we prepared for our Christmas Eve with Melissa's family. Emma carefully packed the homemade gifts she'd created for Melissa's children and put on the new dress we'd bought for special holiday occasions. Melissa's home welcomed us with warmth and laughter. Unlike my parents' formal gatherings, dinner at Melissa's was joyfully chaotic. Children raced around adults, talked over each other, and no one worried about using the wrong fork. Emma was immediately absorbed into a gingerbread house competition with Melissa's children, her earlier sadness nowhere to be seen. You're doing better than I would be, Melissa commented as we watched the children from the kitchen. If my family pulled something like that, I'd be plotting revenge, not creating alternative celebrations. Trust me, I've had my moments, I admitted, but seeing Emma happy is what matters. And honestly, being here feels more like Christmas than those stilted formal dinners ever did. Well, you're family to us, Melissa said, handing me a glass of wine. The chosen kind. As the evening progressed, I watched Emma laugh and play, fully accepted and celebrated for exactly who she was. The contrast with my parents' conditional acceptance couldn't have been clearer. Here there were no judgments about our family structure, no whispered comments about my life choices. Just genuine connection. By the time we drove home through gently falling snow, Emma was half asleep but radiating contentment. That was the best Christmas Eve ever, she murmured. Can we do this every year? If Melissa will have us, absolutely. I like having lots of different people to love, she said sleepily. It's like having a bigger family. As I tucked her into bed, I realized she had intuitively grasped what had taken me years to understand. That family is defined by love and acceptance, not merely by blood. In creating our alternative Christmas, we had actually found something more authentic than what we'd lost. I set out Santa's gifts and filled Emma's stocking, imagining her joy in the morning. For the first time since my mother's call, I felt genuine peace. Whatever happened with my parents, we would be okay. We had each other, and we had people who truly valued us. In the end, that was the greatest gift of all. Christmas morning began with Emma's excited footsteps pattering down the hallway at 6:30 a.m. Mommy, wake up. It's Christmas. I'd been awake for an hour already, sipping coffee and watching the sunrise paint our snow-covered neighborhood in pink and gold. Despite everything, a sense of contentment had settled over me. Today would be different from our usual Christmases, but perhaps better in ways that mattered more. Merry Christmas, sweetheart, I called as Emma burst into the living room, her eyes widening at the sight of presents under our tree. Santa came, she gasped, taking in the filled stocking and carefully wrapped packages that hadn't been there the night before. Of course he did, I smiled. Should we have Christmas pancakes first, or open presents? Presents, she decided instantly, diving toward her stocking. We spent the next hour in a whirlwind of torn wrapping paper and exclamations of delight. Emma squealed when she unwrapped the professional art supplies, immediately opening the colored pencils to examine each shade. I treasured her reaction to the gifts I'd chosen, each one selected with knowledge of her specific interests and dreams. My own small pile of presents included a handmade portrait Emma had drawn of the two of us, framed in popsicle sticks painted gold. It's us on a happy day, she explained. So you can remember that we're always happy together even when other things are sad. The simple wisdom in her words brought tears to my eyes. It's perfect, Em. The best present I've ever received. After presents, we made snowman-shaped pancakes with chocolate chip buttons and strawberry scarves. We FaceTimed with Melissa's family and several of my teacher friends who had become part of our extended chosen family. Each call reinforced what I'd begun to realize, that we weren't isolated or alone despite my family's rejection. At noon, we dressed for our dinner at Grandma Margaret's. Emma wore her new sweater dress with pride, carefully arranging her hair with the sparkly clips Melissa's daughter had given her. I chose an outfit that made me feel confident, not the subdued approval seeking clothes I typically wore to my parents' gatherings. Just as we were about to leave, my phone buzzed with multiple notifications. I almost ignored them, but something prompted me to check. There were 7 new messages in the family group chat, all sent within the last few minutes. The first was from my mother Rebecca. "We need Emma to come by for the family photo at 3 p.m. The Prescotts want pictures of Andrew with all his nieces and nephews for their society newsletter. Please have her wear something appropriate." I stared at the screen, momentarily speechless. After excluding us from the entire Christmas celebration, they wanted Emma to show up just for a photo op. Before I could process this, another message appeared from my mother. "Also, could you possibly bake a batch of your chocolate peppermint cookies and drop them off? The Prescotts heard there's something of a family tradition, and I promised they'd be part of dessert." The audacity was breathtaking. Not only did they want to use Emma as a prop in their perfect family portrait, but they also wanted me to bake the special cookies everyone requested every year, the same cookies that apparently weren't reason enough to include us in the actual celebration. More messages followed. "The photographer will only be here for 20 minutes, so please don't be late. If Emma could wear the red velvet dress from last year, that would coordinate nicely with what the other children are wearing. You don't need to stay for dinner, of course. Just the photo." My hands trembled with anger as I read each message. They were treating us like accessories, useful for completing their perfect family image but not worthy of a place at the table. I took several deep breaths before showing the messages to Emma, carefully explaining that Grandma Diane wanted her to come take a picture with her cousins. "Does that mean we can go to Christmas after all?" she asked, her face brightening with hope. The innocent question made the situation even more painful. "No, sweetie. They just want you for the picture, then we'd leave." Her brow furrowed in confusion. "But why can't we stay? Don't they want to give me my presents?" How could I explain this callousness in terms an 8-year-old could understand? "I think they're still having their business meeting, Em. But we have our special Christmas with Grandma Margaret, remember?" Emma nodded slowly, processing this information. "So, they just want me to be in a picture, then leave?" "Yes, that's what they're asking." She thought for a moment, then looked up with surprising clarity. "That doesn't seem very nice." "No," I agreed softly. "It doesn't." We arrived at Grandma Margaret's charming craftsman home 40 minutes later. The contrast with my parents' formal mansion couldn't have been starker. Margaret's Christmas decor featured handmade ornaments collected over decades, each with a story. A fire crackled in the stone hearth, and delicious smells wafted from the kitchen. Aunt Linda greeted us with warm hugs, as did Cousin Thomas and his wife Jen. Their children immediately whisked Emma away to see the vintage Christmas village Margaret set up each year, complete with tiny skating rink and miniature carolers. As the adults gathered in the living room, I showed them the messages from my mother. "The nerve of that woman," Aunt Linda exclaimed. "Using a child as a photography prop and asking you to bake cookies for a dinner you're not invited to attend." Thomas shook his head in disbelief. "This is a new low even for Aunt Diane." "What are you going to do?" Jen asked gently. All eyes turned to me, and I realized they were genuinely interested in my feelings rather than telling me how I should respond. Another sharp contrast with my parents' approach. "I'm not taking Emma over there to be used as a prop in their perfect family portrait," I said firmly. "And I'm certainly not baking cookies for their dinner." Margaret nodded approvingly. "Good for you, Rebecca. There's a difference between forgiveness and allowing yourself to be mistreated." As we discussed the situation, more messages arrived from my mother asking for confirmation that we would be there at 3 p.m. sharp. Then came a call from my father, which I let go to voicemail. His message was brief and uncomfortable. "Rebecca, your mother is quite set on having Emma in these photos. It would make things easier for everyone if you could just cooperate this one time." Easier for everyone except Emma and me, I thought bitterly. During dinner, a delicious but unfussy meal of roast turkey and all the traditional sides, my phone continued to buzz with increasingly urgent messages. My mother's tone shifted from expectation to irritation to thinly veiled threats about family obligations. Emma, who had been happily chatting with her second cousins, noticed my distraction. "Is Grandma Diane still texting about the picture?" The adults exchanged glances, surprised by her perception. "Yes, sweetheart," I admitted. "She really wants you in that family photo." Emma considered this, then said with remarkable clarity, "But we're having our family dinner here, and taking pictures here too." She gestured to Thomas, who had been capturing moments throughout the meal on his camera. That's exactly right, Margaret agreed. This is family too. As we enjoyed Margaret's famous apple pie, my brother Andrew called. Against my better judgment, I answered, Rebecca, where are you? The photographer has been here for 20 minutes, and Mother is having a fit. His voice held the familiar mix of annoyance and condescension. We're having Christmas dinner with Grandma Margaret, I replied evenly. As you know, Emma and I weren't invited to your celebration. Don't be difficult, he sighed. You know it's just about the Prescott's comfort level. Can't you put aside your feelings for once and think about what's best for the family business? I am thinking about family, I countered. My daughter is not a prop you can summon for photos while excluding her from everything else. And I'm not baking cookies for a dinner we're not welcome to attend. Rebecca, he began, but I cut him off. No, Andrew. I won't help you pretend we're one big happy family for your business associates. If Emma isn't good enough to be at your Christmas dinner, she doesn't need to be in your family photos either. The line went quiet for a moment. You're being selfish, he finally said. This isn't just about you. You're right. It's about Emma too. And teaching her that she deserves to be valued for who she is, not used when it's convenient and discarded when it's not. I ended the call and returned to the table where the genuine warmth and connection stood in stark contrast to what my parents were offering. Emma was laughing with Thomas's daughter, their heads bent over a game. Aunt Linda was sharing stories that had Margaret wiping away tears of mirth. This was real family. Imperfect, sometimes complicated, but fundamentally accepting. Later, as we drove home through the snowy streets, Emma asked, Did I do something wrong by not going for the picture? Absolutely not, I assured her. You did nothing wrong. Then why were they so mad? I considered how to explain adult complexities to an 8-year-old mind. Sometimes people care more about how things look than how they really are. Grandma Diane and Grandpa Harold wanted a picture that made everything look perfect even though they weren't treating us very nicely. Emma was quiet for a moment. That seems like lying, she finally said. It kind of is, I agreed. And you know how we feel about telling the truth, right? That it's always better even when it's hard. Exactly. I reached back to squeeze her hand. I'm proud of you, Emma. And I'm proud of us. That night, as I tucked Emma into bed with her new stuffed penguin, she whispered, This was the best Christmas ever, Mommy. For real, not just pretend. Her words confirmed what I'd begun to realize throughout the day. In losing my parents' conditional acceptance, we had discovered something far more valuable. Authentic connection based on genuine love rather than obligation or appearance. The revelation didn't erase the hurt, but it transformed it into something meaningful. The day after Christmas, I woke to an email from my father. Unlike my mother's demanding texts, his message carried a different tone. Rebecca, I hope you and Emma had a nice Christmas. The photographer situation yesterday was unfortunate. Your mother is upset that the family photos are incomplete. Perhaps we could arrange something after the new year. We still have presents for Emma. No acknowledgement of their exclusionary behavior. No real apology. Just an attempt to smooth things over without addressing the actual issue. After careful consideration, I crafted a response that was firm, but not bitter. Dad, I appreciate you reaching out, but I need to be clear about something. Emma and I are not available for photos that create the illusion of family togetherness when we were deliberately excluded from your Christmas celebration. What hurt most wasn't missing a dinner. It was learning that maintaining appearances for business connections was more important than including your daughter and granddaughter. Emma noticed and was confused about why she wasn't good enough to be part of the whole day, but was wanted just for pictures. That's not a lesson I want her to learn about her worth. When you and Mom are ready to have a real conversation about this, I'm open to it. Until then, we need some space. I pressed send before I could second-guess myself, then took Emma ice skating at the community rink to enjoy the remainder of her school break. We spent the day laughing and falling, warming up with hot chocolate and making plans for New Year's Eve, another night we'd typically spent with my parents that would now be reimagined. By evening, my phone was buzzing consistently. My mother left 3 voicemails, each progressively more indignant about my dramatic overreaction and inability to understand business realities. My father sent a brief text expressing disappointment in my unwillingness to compromise. Several extended family members weighed in as well, some supporting my parents' right to invite whoever they wished to their home, others expressing sympathy for our situation. I silenced my phone and focused on making dinner with Emma, who was blissfully unaware of the family drama unfolding via technology. Just as we finished eating, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Andrew standing in the hallway, his expression a mixture of annoyance and discomfort. "What are you doing here?" I asked after opening the door. "Can I come in? It's freezing out here." I hesitated, then stepped aside. Andrew entered immediately, assessing our modest apartment with that subtle look of judgment he'd perfected over the years. "Uncle Andrew," Emma called from the living room. "Did you bring our Christmas presents?" His expression faltered. "Not today, Emma. I just need to talk to your mom for a minute." Emma returned to her drawing, and I led Andrew to the kitchen where we could speak privately. "Mother is extremely upset," he began without preamble. "You've turned this into a much bigger issue than it needed to be." "I've turned it into an issue." I kept my voice low but couldn't hide my incredulity. "You all excluded us from Christmas, then expected Emma to show up for a photo op like an accessory. How exactly is that my doing?" Andrew sighed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "Look, you know how important the Prescott connection is for Dad's business. Richard Prescott is very traditional. When Heather mentioned you were a single mother, he made some comments about family values. It just seemed easier to avoid potential awkwardness. So instead of standing up for your niece and me, you decided we were dispensable." "It wasn't like that. It was a business decision." "No, Andrew. It was a family decision. You chose business connections over actual family." He leaned against the counter, his corporate polish momentarily slipping. "Not everyone has the luxury of putting principles above practicalities, Rebecca. Some of us have responsibilities. And I don't. I'm raising a child alone, teaching full-time, making ends meet on a fraction of what you earn. Don't talk to me about responsibilities." A flash of something, perhaps guilt, crossed his features before he regained composure. "The point is, you're making this worse by refusing to cooperate. Mother's already talking about reconsidering your portion of the trust fund if this rebellious behavior continues." The threat might once have intimidated me, but now it only clarified how conditional their love truly was. "Tell Mom she can do whatever she wants with the money. I'd rather Emma learn about integrity than inheritance." Andrew stared at me as if seeing me clearly for the first time. "You've changed." "No," I corrected him. "I finally realized my worth isn't determined by this family's approval." Our conversation was interrupted by Emma entering the kitchen. "Uncle Andrew, want to see what Santa brought me?" The innocence of her question highlighted the absurdity of the adult conflict. Here was a child offering connection, while the adults around her created unnecessary divisions. Andrew's expression softened slightly. "Sure, Emma, show me." For 10 minutes he listened as Emma enthusiastically displayed her art supplies and demonstrated her techniques. In those moments, I glimpsed the brother I'd once been close to before status and appearances consumed him. As he prepared to leave, Andrew paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I did argue against excluding you entirely. I suggested you could come for Christmas breakfast before the Prescotts arrived." "That's not exactly standing up for us, Andrew." He nodded, acknowledging the truth in my words. "I'll talk to Mother about the trust fund threat. That was uncalled for. Do what you need to do. But understand that Emma and I aren't bargaining chips or props for the perfect family image. We deserve better than conditional acceptance." After Andrew left, Emma asked why he seemed sad. "Sometimes grown-ups forget what's really important," I explained. "And then they feel bad when they remember. Like how being kind is more important than being rich," she suggested, displaying that uncanny wisdom that continually amazed me. "Exactly like that, sweetheart." Over the next few days, the family drama expanded to social media, where my mother posted perfectly curated Christmas photos with a pointed caption about those who chose not to join our celebration. Several relatives commented with thinly veiled references to the situation, prompting others to ask questions. Rather than engage in the public spectacle, I shared a simple post, a photo of Emma and me with Grandma Margaret, Aunt Linda, and Thomas's family all laughing around Margaret's dinner table. The caption read, "Grateful for family that shows up in all the ways that matter. Merry Christmas from our hearts to yours." The contrast between the staged perfection of my parents' photos and the genuine joy in ours didn't require further explanation. Unexpectedly, support began flowing in from extended family members and old friends who recognized the situation for what it was. My cousin Rachel called to say she'd always felt judged by my parents too. A family friend messaged that she'd experienced similar exclusion when she divorced. Even my father's brother, Uncle James, reached out to express disappointment in my parents' behavior. The solidarity reminded me that standing up for ourselves often inspires others to do the same. By refusing to accept mistreatment, I wasn't just teaching Emma about self-respect. I was creating ripples that might help others recognize their own worth too. Late that night after Emma was asleep, I received a text from my father. "This has gotten out of hand. We should talk." It wasn't an apology, but it was an opening. And for Emma's sake, I was willing to explore it. On my terms, with boundaries firmly in place. "Yes, we should," I replied. "But not until you and Mom are ready to acknowledge how hurtful your actions were. Emma and I deserve genuine respect, not conditional acceptance." Setting this boundary felt like claiming a power I'd always possessed but never fully exercised. Whatever happened next, we would face it with the strength that comes from knowing your own worth, the greatest gift I could possibly give my daughter. New Year's Day arrived with a thick envelope in our mailbox addressed in my father's distinctive handwriting. Inside was a 3-page letter, something unprecedented from a man who typically communicated in brief texts or delegated emotional matters to my mother. "Dear Rebecca," it began. "I've spent the past week reflecting on our family situation, particularly the events surrounding Christmas. While I initially viewed this as a simple logistical issue, I now recognize that it represented something much deeper." I settled onto the couch, surprised by his candor, as the letter continued. "Throughout your life, I've held certain expectations about the path you would follow. When you chose teaching instead of business, then became a single mother, I viewed these as departures from the plan I envisioned. I failed to appreciate that you were creating a life of integrity and purpose on your own terms. The Christmas exclusion was inexcusable. While I initially justified it as a business necessity, your absence created a void that no business connection could fill. Seeing Emma's empty stocking was a painful reminder of misplaced priorities. Your mother and I disagree about how to proceed. She maintains that you're being unreasonable and dramatic. I'm beginning to understand that her concern with appearances has overshadowed what matters most, the well-being of our family. I don't expect immediate forgiveness, but I hope we can begin rebuilding what's been damaged. I miss my daughter and my granddaughter." The letter wasn't a perfect apology. He still partially blamed my mother and didn't fully acknowledge his role, but it represented significant movement from a man who rarely admitted fault. Later that week, further developments unfolded. Aunt Linda called to report that Andrew and Heather were having serious marriage troubles. Apparently, the Prescott business connection had collapsed spectacularly when Richard Prescott was implicated in a financial scandal. The irony wasn't lost on me. The very connection my family had prioritized over us had proven hollow. More surprising was the news about Heather. "She's been caught in some embarrassing lies," Linda explained. "She told the Prescotts that you were some kind of irresponsible party girl, not a dedicated teacher. And she implied Emma had behavioral issues. Your mother discovered the truth when Patricia Prescott made some comment about being relieved the troubled child wasn't at Christmas. The revelation explained much about my parents' willingness to exclude us but didn't excuse it. They had accepted Heather's characterization without question despite 8 years of evidence to the contrary." January passed with careful, tentative communications between my father and me. He sent Emma a belated Christmas gift, the professional easel she'd been wanting, with a note about being proud of her artistic talent. My mother remained largely silent, though Grandma Margaret reported she was sulking about being portrayed as the villain. By February, my father had begun making genuine efforts to rebuild our relationship. He suggested having coffee one afternoon while Emma was at her art class. Neutral territory where we could talk openly. "I underestimated you," he admitted across the cafe table. "All these years I've been focused on Andrew's business success, while missing the remarkable strength it takes to do what you've done. Raise an exceptional child on your own while building a meaningful career. It hasn't been easy," I acknowledged, "especially feeling judged by my own family." "Your mother still doesn't fully understand," he said with a sigh. "She's from a generation where appearances mattered above all else. But I'm trying to help her see what I've finally recognized, that our family is diminished without you and Emma in it. We can't just pretend Christmas didn't happen, Dad." Emma was deeply hurt by being excluded, then being wanted only for a photo. That sent a terrible message about her value. He nodded slowly. "You're right, and I want to make it up to both of you if you'll let me." In March, we attempted a family dinner, just my parents, Emma and me, at a restaurant rather than their home. The neutral location helped ease tensions, though my mother remained stiff and formal. Emma, with a child's capacity for forgiveness, was cautiously excited about seeing her grandparents again. "I made you something," she told them, presenting a beautiful watercolor of birds in flight. My mother examined it with genuine surprise. "This is quite good, Emma. You've been practicing." "Every day," Emma confirmed. "Art teacher says I have real talent." It was a small moment but significant. perhaps the first time my mother had acknowledged Emma's passion without comparing it to her cousin's more practical interests. Throughout dinner, I maintained the boundaries I'd established. When my mother made a veiled critical comment about Emma's outfit, I calmly stated, "We don't speak to Emma that way. She chose her own clothes and looks lovely." My father surprisingly backed me up. "She does look lovely. That blue matches her eyes." By dessert, a fragile peace had formed. Not perfect reconciliation, but the beginning of a more honest relationship based on respect rather than appearance. As spring bloomed, our family dynamics continued evolving. Grandma Margaret became a more central figure in our lives, hosting Sunday dinners where various family members gathered without the pressure of perfection. Andrew, humbled by the Prescott scandal and his marital problems, began showing up without Heather, gradually rebuilding his relationship with Emma. My mother remained the most resistant to change, but even she showed occasional glimpses of growth. When Emma won a school art contest in April, my mother attended the ceremony and actually seemed proud without qualifying her praise or comparing Emma to others. The most meaningful change, however, wasn't in my family but in myself. The Christmas rejection, painful as it was, had forced me to recognize my own worth independent of my family's approval. It had clarified my values and strengthened my resolve to raise Emma with an unshakable sense of her intrinsic value. As the following Christmas approached, I made a bold decision. Instead of waiting for an invitation to my parents' home, an invitation that might again come with conditions, I decided to host my own gathering. "Emma and I would like to invite you to Christmas dinner at our apartment," I told my parents during a November visit. "It won't be as elaborate as your celebrations, but it will be warm and welcoming. Grandma Margaret will be there, along with some of our closest friends." My mother looked surprised. "You want us to come to your apartment for Christmas?" "Yes," I confirmed. "Everyone will be welcome for the entire celebration. No coming and going for photos or specific parts. Just family being together." My father accepted immediately. My mother hesitated but eventually agreed, perhaps recognizing that the power dynamic had permanently shifted. December found Emma and me transforming our small apartment into a festive haven. We created handmade decorations, planned a menu that combined traditional dishes with new favorites, and arranged seating that would accommodate both family and chosen friends. On Christmas Eve, as we put the finishing touches on our preparations, Emma hung a special ornament on our tree, a small frame containing a family photo taken at Grandma Margaret's the previous year. "This is my favorite picture," she explained, "because everyone is really smiling, not just pretend smiling. That's what makes it special," I agreed, admiring the genuine joy captured in that moment. Christmas morning brought a gentle snowfall and the arrival of our guests. My parents appeared first, my father carrying bags of gifts, my mother bringing a bouquet of flowers, a peace offering of sorts. As our apartment filled with family and friends, the contrasts with previous Christmases couldn't have been clearer. Here, there were no rigid traditions or performances of perfection. Children laughed freely, adults conversed genuinely, and no one worried about maintaining appearances. My father, watching Emma explain her artwork to an admiring audience, leaned close to whisper, "You've created something beautiful here, Rebecca. Not just Emma, though she's remarkable. This gathering, it's real in a way our celebrations never were." The acknowledgement meant more than any expensive gift could have. Later, as we gathered around our modest table, extended with borrowed folding tables and mismatched chairs, I looked at the faces surrounding us. Grandma Margaret, her eyes twinkling with pride. Aunt Linda, who had stood by us when it mattered most. Friends who had become family. My father, visibly relaxed away from my mother's perfectionism. Even my mother making genuine efforts despite her discomfort with our less formal setting. And Emma, at the center of it all, hanging an ornament that read, "Family is where love lives." The journey from rejection to this moment had been painful but ultimately transformative. By standing firm in our worth, Emma and I hadn't just survived a family crisis, we had catalyzed a shift toward authenticity that benefited everyone. As dinner concluded, Emma announced she had something special prepared. She stood before our guests and recited a poem she'd written about family. Not the kind you're born into, but the kind you build through love and acceptance. The simple wisdom of her words brought tears to several eyes, including remarkably my mother's. That night, after everyone had gone and Emma was asleep, I reflected on the year's journey. The exclusion that had once felt like rejection had actually been the beginning of something precious. The discovery that family isn't defined by obligation or appearance, but by love that values each person for exactly who they are. What my parents in their audacity had failed to understand was that true family can't be staged for photographs or manipulated for business connections. It must be built on acceptance, nurtured with honesty, and maintained with respect. The painful Christmas of exclusion had paradoxically given us the greatest gift of all, the courage to create a family life based on authentic love rather than conditional approval. As I turn off the lights, I hope this story has resonated with those of you who've experienced similar family struggles. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against family pressure, or found unexpected strength in difficult circumstances? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this journey spoke to you, please hit that subscribe button so we can continue supporting each other through life's challenges. Remember that sometimes being excluded by the wrong people is the first step toward finding where you truly belong. Thank you for being part of my chosen family this Christmas season, and may your new year be filled with authentic connections that value you exactly as you are.